So the first thing I want to mask off is the fretboard, because today we are going to be staining the back and the neck. Now this stain job, if you haven't been following this, is going to be really wild. It's not just a regular flat stain or a sunburst or anything. We're actually doing like a landscape stain, which is going to be very, very interesting in the fact that it's going to have many, many colors in it. But the first thing I need to do is mask everything. So I'm just using straight blue painter's tape here. And I'm going to mask off the fretboard. And this is where the more accurate you can be, the better. Now some people actually scrape the bindings here after they're done. I don't particularly like to do it that way, me personally. I just think, first of all, it's a lot of work. Secondly, it leaves little marks on your binding. And if you can just stop the stain from getting on your binding in the first place, well, then you don't have to worry about that. Now here's a little trick I use to bind off or to tape off a fretboard. Okay, I put on tape on one side. I hope you like this trick. Now here's the trick. What I do is just take regular old paper and I put paper in the middle. I take strips of paper and I didn't cut that thin enough. Notice I'm not being very careful about my cut. It really doesn't matter. And I put that on the inside here. This keeps any of the tape glue from getting on the fretboard itself. And I just get a couple of, and that way I don't have to deal with fret glue or anything like that later on. Or tape glue on my fretboard. Fret glue. The heck's fret glue? Anyway, so I take a couple sheets of that. And I didn't cut that thin enough. Maybe I should have measured, huh? I just put them inside like that, and then I fold the tape over on the paper. And this keeps the glue from the tape off my fretboard, and I don't have to deal with that later on. And protects it. Now what I do is I just fold it over the edge back here like this. So here I'm just going to carefully bind off the headstock. Now the difference between the taping on the neck and the taping on the headstock is this taping on the headstock is temporary until I get the stain on. The taping on the fretboard is going to be there a lot longer because it's going to be there all the way through the finish process. Now I get the trickier part, masking the inlay. Now some of this inlay is pretty protected against stain just as it is. I mean, I could pretty much stain right over it and just wipe it off and it'd be fine. But some of the things, like the wood here in her hair and the ivory here and the mammoth ivory that I'm using in her body, if I get any stain on that, it's going to be forever. So what I use is something called Frisket. It comes in these big rolls like this, and it just kind of rolls off. And you can buy it pretty much at any good art supply shop. And what it is it's kind of like the stuff that you get on like clock faces when you buy a watch or something that they put on there to protect the surface. It's a see-through film that you can cut to the shape of the inlay. And this does take a little while. It's not a very fast process. What I do is get a piece about the right size, peel off the backing. Try to peel off the backing. Here it comes. And I put that down over the inlay. And you can see, I can see right through it, so I can actually see where the inlay is. This inlay goes a little bit on the side, so I'm going to roll it over a little bit. Now I take a very, very sharp X-Acto knife. Something with a really sharp point on it. And now what I'm going to do is very carefully, I'm going to scribe this plastic material around the shape of the inlay. And this is where, if you need magnifying glasses like I do, you put them on. Because you have to be very precise. The more precise you are, the better it's going to look. If you have to err, it's better to err on the side toward the shell than it is toward the wood. And I just very carefully start scribing around. The more careful, the better. Now I'm not going to make you watch me do this whole thing. I'm just going to take off a part of it so you can see how it works. So once I get like maybe down here to the mountain he's standing on, I'll peel some of it back and you can see the basic process that's being done here. Alright, now I'm just going to cut around her foot really clear here. So I've got a nice area to cut for you so you can see what I'm doing. And remember, if you have to err, try not to err at all, but if you have to err on the side of the shell. Because the wood, if the wood doesn't stain, you'll see that real clear. If the shell gets a little, just a little bit of stain on it, it's not so bad. It's not something you want, but you know, most of the time you can live with it. It's usually not noticeable, except to the person who's doing it, and to them it looks terrible forever and ever. But okay, now you can see it's just peeling right off here. And we've got, right here, this is wood, and this is the plastic. So I'm going to go ahead and do the rest of this, and then we're going to start to stain. See you in a bit.